In a landmark decision that will be studied for years to come, the Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs, sending shockwaves through Washington and around the world. This ruling delivers a powerful check on presidential authority, reminding the nation that even the highest office is bound by the Constitution and the rule of law. The decision fundamentally redefines the balance of power between the White House and Congress on trade policy, a core issue that touches every American's daily life, from the price of groceries to the stability of jobs in manufacturing and agriculture. The court declared that the president had overstepped his authority, emphasizing that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the exclusive power to set tariffs and regulate commerce with foreign nations. President Trump had relied on a 1977 law, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to justify his sweeping actions, arguing that national security was at stake. But the court disagreed, ruling that the law was never intended to grant such broad powers over the economy. The tariffs, which reshaped global supply chains and brought in hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue, are now deemed unconstitutional. This decision plunges U.S. trade policy into a period of uncertainty as businesses and trading partners scramble to adjust. For small businesses, state governments and importers who argued the tariffs caused economic harm and were enacted without proper legal authority, this is a major victory. Many hope it will restore predictability and fairness to the marketplace. The Supreme Court has spoken, but the economic and political fallout is just beginning. Lawmakers, economists, and business leaders now face the challenge of charting a new course for America's role in the global economy. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on goods that are brought into the country from abroad. When a government imposes tariffs, it means that imported products become more expensive compared to those made domestically. This is done by charging a fee at the border, which is then often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. As a result, foreign products on store shelves cost more, making it harder for them to compete with American-made goods. Everyday Americans may notice their grocery bills or the price of electronics creeping up, all because of these added taxes. In April 2025, President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on nearly all imports, declaring the day Liberation Day. He argued that these tariffs would help reclaim America's economic destiny, making the country less dependent on foreign goods and more self-sufficient. The administration's goal was twofold: to raise much-needed revenue for the government and to address the ballooning national debt. By August, the tariffs had generated over $200 billion, providing a significant boost to federal coffers. But tariffs weren't just about money. They became a powerful tool in foreign policy, used to pressure countries like China and Mexico to change their trade practices, and to protect American tech giants from overseas competition. Trump and his supporters claimed that by making imported goods more expensive, companies would be encouraged to move their factories back to the U.S., creating new jobs and reviving American manufacturing. The promise of a manufacturing renaissance and a surge in job growth struck a chord with many voters, especially in regions hit hard by factory closures and outsourcing. However, critics argued that these tariffs backfired for many Americans. They pointed out that higher prices hurt consumers and small businesses, while supply chain disruptions led to shortages and uncertainty. Now, with the Supreme Court's decision, the entire strategy behind these tariffs is being questioned, forcing policymakers and businesses to rethink the future of American trade. The legal fight over tariffs was a classic showdown between presidential power and congressional authority. Trump's team cited the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, claiming national emergencies justified unilateral action. Opponents argued only Congress can impose taxes as stated in Article 1 of the Constitution. The major questions doctrine became central. On issues of vast economic impact, only Congress can authorize such sweeping action. Lower courts sided with the challengers, ruling the president overstepped. The Supreme Court took up the case, with the stakes high for both sides. For Trump, a loss would dismantle a key policy and limit future presidential power. For challengers, victory meant reining in executive overreach and easing economic pain. This was more than a trade dispute. It was a battle over the structure of American governance. The Supreme Court ruled the Trump administration exceeded its authority under IEPA by imposing global tariffs without clear congressional approval. The majority opinion stressed that taxing and setting tariffs is Congress's job, not the president's. The court invoked the major questions doctrine, saying such a massive economic move needs explicit legislative backing. The decision invalidates the tariffs, creating immediate logistical and financial challenges for the administration. The ruling reaffirms the judiciary's role as a check on executive power and limits the president's use of emergency powers for broad economic actions. Other tariff authorities, like those for national security, remain untouched. The White House must now rethink its economic strategy without this powerful tool. The end of the tariffs will likely lower prices on thousands of products, from electronics to groceries, offering relief to consumers. Industries relying on imported materials, like construction and manufacturing, stand to benefit from reduced costs and potential job growth. However, U.S. producers of goods like steel and aluminum may face tougher competition from cheaper imports, putting some jobs at risk. The administration's promise of a manufacturing boom is now in doubt. The government also loses a projected multi-trillion-dollar revenue stream, complicating efforts to manage the national debt. The fate of the $210 billion already collected in tariffs is uncertain. Refunds could create a massive administrative challenge. The economic landscape is shifting, with new winners and losers emerging. The decision forces a major recalibration of America's economic outlook. The biggest winners are small businesses in states that challenge the tariffs, now free from burdensome import taxes. International companies and U.S. firms with global supply chains also benefit, as do advocates of free trade. The Trump administration suffers a major defeat, losing a signature policy and facing a public rebuke of its expansive executive power. Domestic industries once protected by tariffs, like steel and aluminum, now face renewed foreign competition and uncertainty. Workers in these sectors may see job security threatened. Those hoping tariffs would reduce the national debt have lost a key revenue source. Economic nationalists face a setback, while free trade advocates celebrate a decisive victory. The debate over America's economic future is far from over. The government must immediately halt tariff collection, bringing a sudden stop to a process that has shaped U.S. trade for years. Ports and customs checkpoints across the country will need to adjust their procedures overnight, creating confusion and uncertainty for importers, exporters, and officials alike. At the same time, the government must address the $210 billion already gathered in tariffs, a staggering sum that will likely trigger a wave of refund claims from businesses large and small. Companies will scramble to recover lost revenue, and the paperwork alone could overwhelm federal agencies. Unwinding the system will be slow, costly, and complicated, with ripple effects that could impact the federal budget, government resources, and even the broader economy. The process will require careful coordination between agencies and may take months, if not years, to fully resolve. In response, President Trump may turn to more targeted tariff tools, such as Section 301 or Section 232, to pursue his trade agenda. But these alternatives require formal investigations, public hearings, and legal justifications, making them harder and slower to implement than the sweeping tariffs used before. The Supreme Court's decision shifts power back to Congress, restoring a constitutional balance that had tilted toward the executive branch for decades. Now, Congress faces a pivotal moment. It may clarify or limit presidential authority over trade, or even reshape the nation's approach to global commerce. Lawmakers could propose new legislation to redefine the rules of trade, setting new boundaries for future presidents and agencies. This will spark a renewed and likely heated debate over America's trade policy, with business leaders, workers, and voters all weighing in on the nation's economic future. The balance of power has shifted, opening the door for new ideas and approaches to how the U.S. engages with the world. Congress is back in the driver's seat, if it chooses to act decisively and seize this opportunity to shape the next era of American trade. The future of U.S. trade will depend on political choices, global reactions, and the willingness of leaders to adapt in the months ahead. The world will be watching closely as America charts its new course. The Supreme Court has closed one chapter in the nation's trade story, ending a controversial era of executive-driven tariffs. But the story of America's role in the global economy is far from over. A new chapter is just beginning, and its outcome will shape the nation and the world for years to come.